am 15 years old. My home is in Adisa. Italy wants to make war against my people. We are a peace-loving country and have much work to do here in Ethiopia without being troubled by foreign countries. We do not want war, but if we are attacked, we will fight to the last drop of our blood to protect our home. My father and brother will take me along when they go to war.
Aklilu Remembers. Historical recollections from a prison cell Aklilu Habtewold, Prime Minister of Ethiopia, from 1881 to 1974. Translated by Getachew Tedla. If by killing us you could redeem Ethiopia from poverty, we then accept your action as a blessing. Prime Minister Tsehafe T'ezaz Aklilu Habtewold's comment before being taken away to be shot to death on the 24th of November 1974, together with 60 other former officials of Emperor Haile Selassie's government. September 17, 1974. Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Preface. I wrote the following account in prison while under detention by the Provisional Military Government. As I was not given the opportunity to see documents and other supporting facts, it is possible that I might have missed a number of pertinent issues which ought to have been highlighted. Nevertheless, what is recorded here is based on factual events which can be proved with the help of extant documents. Tsehafe T'ezaz Aklilu Habtewold. My educational background. A. I was born on Megabit 5, 1904, March 12th, and completed my Amharic language studies at St. Raguel Church. B. After attending Menelik School in Addis Ababa for 3 years, I was sent in 1925 to the Lycée, French grammar school, in Alexandria, Egypt, to continue my studies. C. I attended courses from 1925 to 1931. Upon completion, I received a bachelor degree, D. Then I moved on, and I joined the famous university, the Sorbonne. I read law and took courses in advanced commercial studies and political science. Having completed my studies to 1936, I received the following degrees: a bachelor's in law, a postdoctoral diploma in public law, postdoctoral diploma in economics, an advanced certificate of commerce, and a certificate in political science. 1. Involvement in political activities. Lycée in Alexandria. During the time I attended school at the French Lycée in Alexandria, Egypt, the country's Coptic Orthodox Church Patriarch, His Holiness Johannes, made an official visit to Ethiopia. He gave scholarships to 60 young Ethiopians to study in Egypt. After they arrived in Egypt, the Patriarch complained that he had requested only for 6 students, but he was given 60. Later on, the students faced great problems regarding board and lodging and in getting adequate clothing. From their school in Cairo, 3 students representing the group came to see us in Alexandria and lamented, "As you can see, we are living in dire condition. We are starved and consequently fall sick, and we do not have spare clothes. We beg you to help us to get relief from the desperation." Some 20 of us at the Lycée in Alexandria collected our spare clothes and sent it to them. I had sent a telegram to the Crown Prince, Ras Teferi Mekonnen, who at the time was regent and heir to the throne, stating all the problems the students were facing and requesting that everything possible to be done to gel them out of the impoverishment. During the hot season and vacation periods, the Egyptian government moves its office from Cairo to Alexandria. Coincidentally, the office had moved to Alexandria at the time. Along with one of my friends, Meshesha Hailu, who now become a member of Parliament, we went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and demanded to see the minister. After a long wrangling, they allowed us in. The official we met, whose name I cannot recall, was in fact the Minister of Communication and acting Foreign Affairs Minister. Incidentally, he was a Copt. We explained to him the reason of our visit. We reminded him that his government has the responsibility of taking care of for the students' health, clothing, and accommodation. Otherwise, they should be sent back to Ethiopia. If the negligence continues and let the students go on miserable and sick, we told the minister, the relationship between the Ethiopian and Egyptian Orthodox Christian churches could be watered down and possibly be interpreted. We also assured the minister that we, the current students, were going to be the future leaders of Ethiopia and would not forget any such calamity. The Egyptian minister was touched by the students' suffering. He told us that he was traveling back to Cairo, and we should also go there and bring the students with us to meet the patriarch. He added, if our compliant was canard, we would all be in trouble, and this we assented. On the day of the appointment, His Holiness the Patriarch was surprised to see us with the students he brought from Ethiopia. I and Meshesha Hailu translated the discourse between the minister and the students. The minister posed some questions to the students through us, to which they replied. I tried hard to get the minister understand the heart-rending sufferance of the students. Finally, the minister realized the condition was as bad as I had told him. In that moment, his protocol told him that a telegram from Addis Ababa had reached King Farouk. The message urged the government of Egypt to send the sick students to hospital and the rest back home if the government is unable to ensure their safety. The minister and the patriarch conferred for a while and ordered A, that the students should be fed properly, B, that they should be given a reasonable stipend, and C, pairs to buy them each 2 sets of clothes. It was said that the clothes should be bought while we were still in Cairo to assist the treasurer in the purchases. As agreed, we went to a shop with the treasurer and bought the students some clothes. I still remember the students choosing quite expensive clothes, reddening the treasurer's eyes at every choice, settling the dust. Thus I went back to Alexandria. The headmaster of the school had left a message for me asking that I should see him. When I dropped at his office, he furiously shouted at me that I was a pupil and not a politician who could travel to Cairo. He told me that no refund of my expenses would be paid. This was bad news, as I had borrowed some money from my fellow foreign students. For 6 months things seemed improving, and the students lived in better conditions. After a while, we received another message that said the situation had relapsed. When we checked, we realized they nearly were in a saddening situation. This time there was not much we could do. I immediately sent a telegram to the emperor, stating the students' misery. Our consul in Jerusalem, Alo Paulus, arrived in Cairo at the executive order of His Majesty and arranged for the students' return to Addis Ababa. Some of the students I still remember include Faleki Ergetu, now Kegnazmak, Zude Gebrehiwot, now Bitwoded, Tefera Sayefu, Tefera Sheshu, and Wolde Mariam Haile, now General. Otto, Mashesha Hailu, and General Wolde Mariam have deeper knowledge about this history. 2. Events during my last days at Sorbonne University. It was Mussolini's agreement with France that gave him the impetus to invade Ethiopia. France is an old friend and traditionally supporter of Ethiopia. This is mainly because of the Addis Ababa-Djibouti railway line, which was constructed by the French. For example, when the emperor and his entourage toured Europe in 1924, he established a makeshift at Paris, and it was from there he had visited London, Rome, and Stockholm. Because France feared the rise of Hitler and Mussolini, French Prime Minister Pierre Laval wanted to lure Italia away from Germany, Ethiopia, as a gift. Mussolini tied an agreement with France by which France conceded not to object Italian deeds on Ethiopia, including the country's occupation. It should be recalled that from the very beginning, when Ethiopia appealed to the League of Nations of an imminent invasion, France sabotaged to have Ethiopia's appeal overlooked, and when Italy declared war on Ethiopia, France advocated Italy. During this period, election to the French Parliament was in progress. The 3 main parties, the Radical Socialist Party, the Socialist Party, and the Communist Party, were determined to topple the government of Monsieur Laval. They were led by prominent politicians like Monsieur Edouard Herriot, L. Sixon Blum, and Maurice Thorez. Taking advantage of the situation, I explained to all three parties that Ethiopia was threatened by occupation. We had appealed to the League of Nations. By betraying Ethiopia, Laval wanted to please Mussolini and had weakened the objective of the collective security. Moreover, he tried to hinder Ethiopia's appeal to the League of Nations and supported the aggressive leadership of Mussolini and Hitler, thereby speeding up the World War. I revealed to all parties my interest to speak at their rallies. I knew that this was a wind-fallen chance to bring the nature of the threat before us to the attention of the French people and to the rest of the world. After some discussion, they allowed me to make as many speeches as I wished at their public meetings. When opportunity occurred, I was free to deliver speeches about Ethiopia and the Italian aggression. I warned the French people that if no action was taken, France and other defenseless countries would soon face the same fate as Ethiopia was experiencing. On one particular day, I made 3 speeches, each at different venues of the parties. Surprisingly, I was given a seat among the party's leaders. They all introduced me as representative whose country was the victim of Italian aggression and an Ethiopian who was present to publicly explain the current situation in Ethiopia. The next day, French newspapers, according to their political allegiance, published stories quoting my speech and describing me Aklilu Habtewold, a representative of the Ethiopian elite, workers, and the armed forces, had made the following speech. Sharinon copies of these newspapers can be found in France. At the end of the grueling campaign, Laval's party lost to Blum's Socialist Party. Winning majority seats in Parliament, the Socialist Party formed a coalition with other political organizations known as Front Populaire and took over the leadership of the French government. In the meantime, Italian forces had invaded Ethiopia, and the Emperor went into exile to London. When I spoke with Prime Minister Blum, he gave me his console about the Italian invasion. He said that Italy took over Ethiopia before his party ascended to power. Nevertheless, he assured me that France would never recognize Italy's occupation of Ethiopia. Unfortunately, the other powerful nations, including Britain, had recognized Italy's occupation of Ethiopia. During the 5 years before World War II started, I remained in Paris as an officer in charge of the Ethiopian embassy. The embassy issued passports to all Ethiopian refugees, besides giving other consular services. Whenever the French government prepares an official invitation, the officer in charge of the Ethiopian embassy was naturally invited. For instance, when the King and the Queen of Great Britain made an official visit to France in 1938, all resident ambassadors were invited. I also attended the welcoming ceremony where we were supposed to greet the royal couple. According to the protocol arrangements, Ethiopian and Italian ambassadors were to sit side by side. When the Italian ambassador saw that I was seated next to him, he was very annoyed and started shouting madly at me. Enraged, I shouted back even angrily. Everyone watched the fracas. The chief of protocol immediately placed an official from the Foreign Affairs Ministry to seat in between. At the evening dinner reception, the new protocol arrangement was preserved. All delegates were evasive of being seen with me by the Italian. However, the President of the Parliament, President Harriet, along with Prime Minister Blum, came to me, held my hand, and led me to the buffet. We had a meticulous discussion of the current Ethiopian situation. Both statesmen assured me that they would stand by Ethiopia in every possible way. The next day, I reported to His Majesty the Emperor, who was in London, about the discussion. Indeed, both statesmen and their party kept their promise to the end in supporting Ethiopia. In recognition of his support, the Emperor had decorated President Edouard Herriot with the Selassie Cordone. 3. Briefing journalists and establishing committees. Propaganda was one of the prime means of warfare. Italian propaganda was channeled through newspapers, radio, and cinema, disseminating offensive opinions about Ethiopians as primitive, slave traders, akin to wild animals, etc. They claimed that their mission in Ethiopia was to modernize the country and introduce a civilized way of life. As a result, the French public sympathized with Italy's camouflaged intention. I set out on a massive counter-campaign to percolate Ethiopia's case to all concerned officials, the media, and to the public at large. I, therefore, accomplished the following toa. A. I had intimate ties with many journalists, which paves the way to explain them the reality. I evidenced that Ethiopia is a Christian country since many past centuries, and because of its unique civilization, the nation had maintained its independence for a long period. I also demolished that Italian incrimination of slave trading was fictitious by drawing on numerous facts and concrete evidences. The next day, newspapers, particularly publications of the three main parties, published a report of my statement. B. My close friends, Monsieur Jean Goulet, later he joined the Ministry of Information in Ethiopia and started a French-language newspaper, and some other French journalists assisted me to form two committees that would facilitate the advocacy work. The committees organized mass gatherings, and we elucidated the meeting about fascist animosities. When the war started, some countries sent Red Cross teams to Ethiopia. Likewise, the French Red Cross asked its government permission to send a delegation to Ethiopia, but the French government denied the permission. Instead, it collected financial contributions and amenities, beds, clothes, put together a volunteer medical doctors team, and sent a non-governmental mission under the leadership of a Monsieur Jean Goulet. The French benevolence was greatly admired and acknowledged by the Secretary of the Ethiopian Red Cross, Aklilu Habtewold. Upon the delegates' return, a big meeting was held to hear their report. Monsieur Jean Goulet declared that he had not seen any evidence of slave trade in Ethiopia, and that he was impressed to discover Ethiopians being more free and civilized than the invading Italians. The remark commanded a warm applause. C. With the support of these two committees, a newspaper entitled Nouvelles d'Ethiopie, News of Ethiopia, was established. Its objective was to inculcate Ethiopia's cause and the barbarity of Italians. I had contributed various articles to this newspaper. I have one copy of this newspaper in my archive. The two committees are named Ethiopia Action Committee and Ethiopian People's District. 4. Appointment to the League of Nations. Even though I was quite young and pursuing my college study, observing my keen interest and commitment, the Emperor appointed me permanent secretary of the Ethiopian delegation to the League of Nations at Geneva. The delegation was led by Fitarari Teklehawariat Waya, who was the Ethiopian minister in Paris. We both used to attend the meetings and presented our orientation to the League members. The well-known political scientist and my former instructor, Professor Gaston Jez, was a special advisor to the delegation. I still have the written permit issued by the Swiss government on March 13, 1935, in my archive. Later, Belatengeta Woldemarian replaced Fitarari Teklehawariat. The Emperor sent a telegram to Teklehawariat effecting my appointment as press attachix at the Ethiopian embassy in Paris. However, the newly appointed minister refused to acknowledge my appointment. In spite of his rejection, I performed my press-attached duties from the hotel room where I resided, giving briefings and interviews to journalists. For instance, Monsieur Laval, the Prime Minister of France, and the British Foreign Affairs Minister, Sir Samuel Hoare, held talks which resulted in the Laval Pact. The pact consists of the following conspiratorial accord. To bring peace between Italy and Ethiopia, the best solution is to detach a portion of the country Harar, Sidamo, and Bale provinces as Italian colonial land, and to keep the Ethiopian boundary restricted to the Amhara areas, namely Gondar, Gojam, and Tigray. I'm viewing this as the ultimate solution for a peaceful settlement of the disagreement between the two countries. They disclosed their plan to the Emperor through their respective ambassadors. As soon as I learnt of the covenant from the Emperor, I leaked to the famous journalist Madame Rapatel Taboui, who was the director of the Radical Party's newspaper, of the plot. She immediately scooped the news and headed to London, where there was greater freedom of the press. She exposed the conspiracy through various newspapers and radio programs. Consequently, British newspapers gave high priority to the story and stated that the Laval Pact legitimized aggression and could endanger the ideals of the Collective Security Agreement. An intense disagreement broke out in the British Parliament, and Hoare was asked to explain his action. He explained the issues in tears and said he made this agreement simply to save Ethiopia from further humiliation and conquest. He further stated as no country would protect Ethiopia from the aggressor, he was earnestly trying to help end the controversy. With this defense, he apologized in public for his deeds. The world also contradicted the pact. As the emperor strongly refused to make a deal on this matter, the whole idea was dropped from further consideration. While I entirely committed myself to perusing my country's affairs, my main support concerning daily routines, accommodation, and food was provided by my girlfriend, who eventually became my wife, Mademoiselle Colette. She had just completed her studies and was teaching. I relied on her for financial backing. She earns a modest salary and also received monetary support from her father. I read in a newspaper report that after the battle at Mechu, the emperor would proceed to Gore to continue the war with the invading Italians. I realized that there was not much we could achieve at the League of Nations. The only option that was left to us was to expel the enemy by force. I decided to travel to Gore and join the emperor's army. The only possible means of travel was to fly by Royal Airlines to Sudan, and then to take a boat down the Nile River to Gambela. With the assistance of my current wife, Madame Colette, who was generous enough to give me money and to solicit contributions from our close friends, Monsieur Lucas, Denia, Luger, Nif, etc., I bought the air ticket. Monsieur Lucas decided to go with me to the war front. We bought the necessary equipment for our trip, such as tents, medicine, etc. 2 days before our departure, we read in a newspaper that the emperor had arrived at Djibouti on his way to London. As we were in the dark on the emperor's movements, we were saddened and lost all hope. We were thus obliged to cancel our trip. 5. Monsieur Marcel Griol, the famous French author. Monsieur Griol had published many novels. He had also traveled to Ethiopia and visited many places in the country, including the province of Gondar. When he returned to his country, he published a book entitled Flambeurs d'Hommes, Those Who Burn People. On this novel he wrote, Leo in Ethiopia, in earlier times, one method of criminal punishment was to dress the convict with wax-soaked cloth and burn him alive. For the Italians, this statement was a fodder for propaganda. Together with other documents and books, they presented this statement to the League of Nations in an attempt to cast Ethiopians as savage and barbarian. Monsieur Griol was very annoyed that his novel was wickedly misused. He traveled personally to Geneva to protest at the League's summit. He informed the delegates that this book was a total fiction, and the idea of incineration was used purely to give a romantic glamour to the story. In fact, he became one of the strong proponents of Ethiopia. Afterwards, we often met and discussed matters relating to Ethiopia. I realized that a distinguished writer like Griol could be made a key purveyor of counter-propaganda if he was personally briefed by the emperor himself about the Italian aggression. He would then be able to propagate our cause to a larger public. I contacted the emperor, who was in Jerusalem, and suggested to His Majesty to explain the course of the battle and Italian cruelty to Griol so that he could write out the atrocity. The emperor agreed and instructed me to send Griol to him. We collected money, purchased a plane ticket, and sent him to Jerusalem. He received an audience and traveled with the emperor in a British warship to Gibraltar. He took down everything the emperor had told him. When he came back, he was quite impressed and was more sympathetic towards the Ethiopian position. A few days after his return, Monsieur Griol published a booklet entitled From the Emperor's Mouth. In this work, he outlined in detail the aggression of the fascist Italian forces against Ethiopia. He recounted how churches and residential houses were burnt down. The Italians, equipped with modern armaments and aeroplanes, had exterminated the barefooted Ethiopians, who had only a handful of conventional firearms. He inquired how those who claimed to spread civilization were destroying a country and its people. The booklet dominated public opinion, and many were so grieved that they even wept publicly when they read the account. After the distribution of the booklet throughout Europe, the vast majority of Europeans gave strong support to the emperor and to Ethiopia. A symposium was held at Geneva in support of the Ethiopian cause. Even though the Italians were breaking their back making a prolonged propaganda campaign to legitimize their invasion, their effort turned out futile. In the end, many people realized that the barbaric savages were the Italians, while the civilized people were the Ethiopians. This booklet is available in Europe. A copy is available in the Emperor's personal library, too.